This story begins way back in the fields and plains of Kansas. Mike came from a family of modest means. In fact, in the early years, they had to travel by horse instead of by car. Mike's father, John, was involved in the printing business, including newspapers. So Mike ended up creating newspapers for his grade school classes, and he made himself the editor, of course. Mike's mother, Frances, stayed busy at home taking care of Mike and his older sister, Sharon Lynn, while doling out household chores. Mike loved when his sister was assigned to take out the trash, because she would bribe Mike to do it instead. This gave our young Republican his first taste of capitalism. Mike developed his love of acting and performing early. In junior high, he was in a production of The Mikado. Naturally aiming for the top, he tried out for the role of Pooh Bah, the Lord High Everything Else. He ended up in the chorus. But Mike was bitten by the performing bug.
Mike considers his place to be center stage. Head writer, star of the show, with the most lines. The one everybody can come up to afterwards and say, Mike, good show, and to the rest of us say, yeah, fine job. That's what Mike would like, but that's what all of us would like.
As Mike did well in high school and began to show promise in life, he did what many other talented people from Kansas before him had done. He left. But Mike never forgot the lessons he learned from growing up there. Hard work, a sense of community, and helping others. Next stop on the education trail was the University of Denver. Mike says he picked DU based on 3 important criteria. It was 500 miles from home, had beautiful views of the mountains, and, oh yeah, offered him a full tuition scholarship. Mike did well as an undergrad at DU. He was vice president of the student body, chief justice of the student court, and chaired the Republican mock convention. But he says, most importantly, he emceed the Miss University of Denver pageant. Then it was on to law school. Mike attended DU Law back when Dean Yegi was in charge, what he likes to think of as the golden age of the law school. His home on Broadway had known a golden age in another era, right next door to Club 404. Mike remembers the revelers relieving themselves on his front lawn and passing out on the porch. Despite the living conditions, Mike did well as always. He graduated summa cum laude, and what else? He was editor-in-chief of the Law Review. He even worked as a teaching assistant for Ved Nanda. 40 years later, both are still haunting the halls of the law school. Mike did something else in law school. In its 3rd year, a friend from Wichita called to see if he wanted to have a steak dinner cooked by 2 girls from Wichita. Mike said this offer was like asking a law student if he wanted the answers to the bar exam. It's also how he met his future wife, Kathy. They learned they had much in common. Both were from Kansas. Kathy owned a car. Mike wanted to borrow a car. Mike wanted to go out to eat with friends. Kathy didn't mind eating, and she had a car. It was love at first bite. A few months later, they were engaged. In September, they were married. No word if the car was included as part of the deal.
Some people, because they're all of our friends, really saw something special in our relationship, and so we have no idea what it is, but it's kept us together for the 44 years.
Eventually, Kathy gave birth to a lovely daughter, Michelle, and Mike gave birth to a thriving corporate and securities law practice at Loaf and Barnhill. Mike says Ernie Loaf was his mentor and was a remarkable man and lawyer. As his career progressed, Mike never lost his love of all things theatrical, including politics. In the 70s, Mike was elected Arapahoe County Republican chairman. On his first day, the treasurer handed him the checkbook and said they had $600 in the bank. Oh, and the county commissioners were on the verge of being indicted. Somehow, Mike talked his way out of those issues. It seemed acting was in his blood, literally. What almost nobody knows, including Mike up to this moment, is that he is the great-great-great-great-grandson of a famous Kansas showman and entertainer. Yes, Mike is the direct descendant of the traveling snake oil salesman who eventually became known as the Great and Powerful Oz. Mike and his colleague Dennis Graham eventually decided to set up their own practice with their friend Bob Showalter. Business flourished, but after practicing for a number of years, Mike decided it was time to give back to students who were trying to develop their own legal skills. He decided to teach legal writing, a saintly undertaking which requires the wisdom of Solomon, the patience of Job, and the dedication of Hercules, all roles that Mike was willing to take on. In his first semester of teaching, Mike decided to use his love of acting to show the students how hep he was. He gave each week the title of a Marx Brothers movie, A Day at the Races, A Night at the Opera. He knew the students would be duly impressed, if not awed, by his cultural relevance. Except that his students didn't know who the Marx Brothers were. They thought these titles were the names for albums from the hard rock band Queen. When Mike tried to explain, the students still didn't get it. They thought the Marx Brothers had invented communism and were unaware that they had made any movies, let alone any hard rock albums. As so often happens, true genius goes unrecognized. Not long after he began teaching, Mike realized that the first-year law school experience was lacking a component. Even though lawyering process included a number of experiential components, the program was missing something, an individual mentor for each student. Mike realized that developing and perfecting legal skills shared something with developing and perfecting theatrical skills. Both require practice. But practice does not just involve getting jobs and honing skills by repetition. It also involves having someone behind the scenes who can serve as counsel and confidant. Mike checked around and found that the law school had no formal mentoring program. So he put on his wizard's hat and magically created one himself. First, Mike used his wizardry to coax colleagues from his days of practicing law to serve as mentors for his students. Soon other lawyering process professors recognized what Mike had created and wanted mentors for their students as well. To meet the growing need, Mike joined the Law Alumni Council and tapped their members to serve as mentors. With little formal support and less money, Mike was able to pair up attorneys with any students who wanted a mentor. Eventually, the results were nearly as wonderful as those of his progenitor, the Great and Powerful Oz. Mike was able to provide an individual mentor for every incoming law student. No easy task. And the students have found partnerships with their mentors so helpful and so important that many have continued to remain connected to their personal mentor well beyond their first year.
Mike's strength as a mentor was he really, I would say, cared about me. Yeah, and I felt like an individual. I didn't feel like he was going this person, then this person. I really did feel like a person that he wanted to see all the way through law school and then succeed in a career, which has happened.
Mike's efforts have produced the largest and, we believe, most successful law school mentoring program in the country. At this time, the mentoring program has about 300 attorneys serving as mentors for about 500 students. Mike has moved from full-time to part-time at the College of Law. He and Kathy have taken time to travel the world. They have sailed the Caribbean, Alaska, the Baltics, and most recently visited China. But perhaps the most appropriate was their trip to Australia. Because, after all, where else would you expect an old Kansas man to end up but the land of Oz? Still, they always come back to Denver because, as the movie says, there's no place like home. And so we have come full circle from the cornfields of Kansas to the spotlight of success. We gather here to recognize someone who has given selflessly throughout his career. As the great wizard himself once aptly observed,
Back where I come from, there are men who do nothing all day but good deeds. They are called good deed doers, and their hearts are no bigger than yours. But they have one thing you haven't got, a testimonial.
What better testimonial can we offer than to recognize an honored colleague's stellar contribution to the legal community? Join us in congratulating the most wonderful wizard of mentoring as we present Mike Massey with the Robert H. McWilliams Jr. DU Law Stars Alumni Professionalism Award.